Total loss or repairable. How to spot a structural red flag or red flags after a house fire. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Swan. Thank you for visiting my channel. As you know, we focus on fire damage properties. If you're a homeowner and you want to schedule time to talk about options after your house fire, please contact me. You see my Calendly link on my profile. Also doing mentorship as well. If you check out my bio, bringing as much of my experiences to you and yours. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. Now, let's start with something that surprises a lot of homeowners. Heat damages structural components without burning them. So when wood framing is exposed to sustained temperatures above 200 to 250 degrees Fahrenheit, which is well below what's actually needed to ignite, its internal cellular structure begins to break down. The wood loses density, it loses tensile strength, and from the outside, it can look completely normal, but it can no longer carry the loads it was designed to carry. This is why a visual inspection, even a thorough one, is honestly not sufficient after a fire. You can't see heat damage the way you can see charring, right? As long as you, as you can see on this slide, the danger zone extends well beyond where the fire actually burned. Now, what is a total loss, right? Like if you're dealing with this, you may have heard that term thrown around quite a few times. Before we get into specific red flags, let's first define what that actually is. So a total loss is typically declared when one of two conditions is met. The first is either that the cost to repair the property exceeds a certain percentage of the property's pre-fire value. This threshold varies by state and by insurer. So commonly 50 to 80%, but the principle is the same. At some point, rebuilding becomes more expensive than just starting over, okay? Now, the second is the structural damage is so extensive or so fundamental that the property cannot be safely repaired to its original condition, regardless of the loss. So as you can see on this slide, total loss isn't just about how bad it looks, it's about the math of repair versus value and the feasibility of a safe restoration. Now let's walk through the key structural components and what to look for in each one. So starting at the top, the roof system. Roof truss and rafters are critical load-bearing components. After a fire, look for sagging or any visible deflection or dip in the roof line, which is a serious warning. Look for cracking along the grain of wood, which indicates the structural fibers have failed. Even in the engineered lumber and the plywood sheathing where the layers separate, the structural integrity is most likely in these situations is gone. One thing that catches people off guard, a roof truss doesn't need to be charred to be compromised. If the fire burned long enough, like in the attic space, for example, the heat alone may have degraded trusses that look visually intact. So as you can see on this slide, any sagging, cracking, anything of that nature in the roof structure warrants a structural engineering assessment before any other work begins. Now moving down to the flooring system and load-bearing walls. For floor joists and beams, particularly in multi-story homes, look for the same indicators, right? Sagging, cracking, and anything even related to subfloor plywood. A floor that feels soft or springy in areas that weren't previously soft is a warning sign. In severe cases, floor joists can be so compromised that the floor is unsafe to walk on. So, this is the reason why you should always get professional clearance before entering the fire damage structure to begin with, right? For load-bearing walls, the indicators are bowing and raking, meaning the wall has shifted out of plumb. So this can also include significant charring or cracking of the studs and headers. So headers over the doors and windows also are particularly important because they carry concentrated loads. So if a header is compromised, the entire wall section above it is essentially at risk. So as you can see on this slide, these are not cosmetic issues, but they are structural failures that affect the safety of the entire building. Now, beyond the visible structural components, there are specific heat damage indicators that tell you how far the thermal damage actually reached. Now, this can be like discoloration of wood beyond charring, a grayish or darkened tone in wood that isn't, charred, often indicates sustained heat exposure that has begun degrading the material. The lamination of plywood, which is when the layers of a plywood panel begin to separate, or the panel has lost, structural integrity regardless of how it looks from the surface. Spalling of the concrete. This is when the concrete surfaces develop surface pitting, flaking, or cracking from heat exposure, which indicates the material has been thermally stressed. So this matters most for the foundation elements. You also have melted or twisted metal components. So aluminum, a lot of people don't know this, but aluminum melts at around 1200 degrees Fahrenheit. So if you see aluminum components that have deformed, the temperatures in that area reach levels that likely compromise nearby structural wood as well. So, when really taking a good look on this slide, these indicators truly help map how far the structural damage actually extends beyond what burning shows you. So I want to be direct about something. Nothing in this video replaces professional structural assessment. And we can always talk about that. Like I said, feel free to contact us. My Calendly link is attached to my profile. What I've walked through gives you the knowledge to understand what you're looking at and to ask the right questions. But, the definitive assessment of whether a fire damaged structure is safe and repairable requires, structural engineering, not just a contractor in many cases, and definitely not just an insurance adjuster. So a structural engineer will assess load paths, evaluate the residual capacity of damaged components, and give you a written assessment that becomes part of your claim documentation. This is also something that we do when we're working with a lot of homeowners, especially when they just have decided rebuilding is not for them. This is part of our due diligence process, right? So we can figure out how we can make and help everyone win that's involved in the transaction, especially when you're one of our clients. So, if you're in a situation where your insurer's adjuster, has assessed the damage, but you're not confident in the scope, you have the right to hire your own structural engineer as well and submit that assessment as part of your claim. So as you can see on this slide, a structural engineer's report is one of the most powerful documents you can have, especially in a disputed or complex claim. So what actually happens if your home is declared a total loss? Well, from an insurance standpoint, a total loss declaration typically triggers your policy's total loss provisions, meaning your insurer pays out based on the insured value of the structure rather than itemized repair costs. Depending on your policy, this may be closer to the full replacement cost of the structure, which we do see often. From a practical standpoint, a total loss declaration usually means demolition of the remaining structure before rebuilding can begin. And that adds both time and cost to the rebuild process. And it opens up a decision point that's worth thinking about. At the point of a final decision of a total loss, you are essentially starting from scratch on an empty lot, which means the question of whether to rebuild on that lot or sell it, as I mentioned, and move on is a very real one worth examining now that you have all the information in front of you. So as you can see on this slide, a total loss isn't the end of the road, but it truly does change the significance of the conversation. And like I said, a lot of our clients, especially when we get to this point, they don't really. A lot of our clients don't want to go through the mental stress and the headache of trying to rebuild something that is not going to be the same as it was before, and turning into a general contractor and living out of a hotel for a year and a half to repair the property. A lot of people have a lot of history and a lot of memories at their properties, but what it ultimately comes down to is them saying, I'd rather not give up that year of my life to oversee this project. And we do have some clients that do less than 10%, and there is no right or wrong decision. The right decision is the one that you make. But as I mentioned, we have about less than 10%, let's just call it 10% of our clients who do end up deciding to rebuild. And out of that 10%, 5%, which is half of them, end up contacting us back within six months of starting the rebuild and saying, I'm way over in my head. I have now decided, let's just sell the property. So as I mentioned, there is no right or wrong decision. It's whatever decision that you make. But our job and my job and why, I love this career is that our job is just to help you get the information, the black and white, practical, logical numbers and information in front of you. And from there, the decision is yours, right? So, appreciate you guys checking this out. Hopefully it was helpful. Hopefully it brought you as much value as possible, right? And contact us if you'd like to have any further conversations. I really appreciate you checking out the channel. More of this information dropping soon. If you want to see more, if you know anyone that's going through something similar, contact them, subscribe to the channel so that you don't lose, my information. And I really appreciate you all as always. I'll talk to you all soon.